Good afternoon. I'll continue in the same type of topic, sensor-driven design for personalized health. I decided to give you a few examples of clinical trials we have done here on campus and tell you what is involved in making them happen. Instead of just categorizing all sorts of sensors and talking about their pros and cons, I'll do it in the context of clinical trial. What do you think is going on here? No gas? Why no gas? I always have gas in my car. The gas gauge maybe is not working, and in case of my college roommate, he didn't care. So this is not working. So this is a very simple sensor, but it's very effective. I cannot imagine driving with such a simple sensor, assuming I make use of it, assuming I do something about the sensor. So this worried me that if this sensor fails, we're going to be in trouble. In fact, in a more complicated machine like a 747, what if the sensors don't work? That's not good. So when I saw that, I said, I'll never fly again. All these sensors, all these indicators, gas, tracks, and you name it on the plane. So being a data scientist, partly, this is not doing well. Can you all hear me? Okay, I'll not use that. So if you look at the data, it's actually pretty good. Most planes have had zero or almost zero fatal crashes. Maybe because of sensors, maybe because design was done properly, over-designed, over-tested, and all that. So this is really wonderful that sensors actually help us. I've been told that usually in talks you should take a topic and kind of go through that topic. So that's exactly my plan. I want to talk about three different things. One, I want to say sensors are absolutely useless. I know that's the topic here. Second message that I have today is that sensors are actually somewhat useful. And my final message is that sensors are very useful. So you will see all this throughout the talk, and I'll point out what this means. I'm not crazy, and I'm not a politician. These actually have a meaning. So this sensor is actually useful if we know what to do with it. Of course, the algorithm, the intelligence that we use to process the information this sensor gives us is very simple. It depends on the context. If I'm driving in Utah or wherever, where the next gas station is 40 miles away from me or 20 miles, I have a different context than if I'm driving in LA. And then the risk tolerance. I may have a lot of tolerance for risk and I may not. So whatever algorithm is in my head, plus this information, I make use of it to make a decision in terms of when to put gas in my car. Bottom line, sensors by themselves are useless unless you have the right type of algorithm and back end, if you want to call it that. To prove my point, I'm going to talk about 4 or 5 projects that we have done at UCLA or are doing at UCLA, and they are all clinical trials. So sort of end-to-end project. Every project starts with us, engineer, computer scientists, sitting with a team of medical scientists, or we have a recently new project, very big one on sports analytics, and we tell our colleagues, are you committed to this project? Let's say a cardiologist. They say, what does that mean? We say it means you have to meet with us every week for 3 years. If the answer is no, we won't work with them, and we say you shouldn't really work with us. If they do, then that's a real collaboration. Every project that I'm going to talk about today has that characteristic. A big team of medical scientists, sports coaches, volleyball coaches have been involved, and we will see a few things about them. So the first project was called, or one of the projects was called WANDA. It's a remote health monitoring for congestive heart failure patients. We used a lot of sensors. We had 1,500 subjects. These are actual patients where we tested the system on them. The system, of course, consists of sensors. It has weight scales, wireless, glucose monitors for a different study of diabetes. We have blood pressure. We have activity monitor that he talked about, a bunch of sensors. And that's okay, and that's useful, but what becomes useful are all these machine learning on context awareness, interactive machine learning, and all that gives life to these data and let us make sense of these data. So before we started this, our team, by the way, this study involved doctors at UCLA, UCSF, Davis, UCSD, and Cedars-Sinai next door, and UC Irvine. So large study, 1,500 subjects, which is considered relatively large. And we asked them to rate different factors. Some of those factors you heard in the previous talk. If there is a weight gain of whatever, that's an indicator. And the goal of this study was to prevent readmission, because hospitals get penalized if there is a readmission within 30 days. And that's going to 90 days very soon. So one of the hypotheses by this smart group of cardiologists and internal doctor was, if there is a weight gain of more than 3 pounds in a single day, that there is a high chance of readmission in the next few days. Our full-time nurses had to call these patients to see what is going on in the hope of preventing the readmission. So this is something they gave us. It turned out that after our study, after 3 years and 1,500 subjects, that's not predictive. So their hypothesis was wrong. This is what they've been using in the hospital every day, all over California. And these are data coming from sensors. So the conclusion that I would draw is sensors are absolutely useless, because it's a weight scale that's accurate, all that stuff. It's not giving us any information. So the other thing we did before we started this study, we asked this group of cardiologists to rate different things, if blood, that is dangerous, that there is a high chance of readmission. One was if the blood pressure is more than some number, so they gave us a lot of things. Some of them they rated as high prediction value, some medium, some low. After we did retrospective study and we run all of this in a machine learning algorithm, it turned out that of the 15 or so indicator that they gave us, only one of them turned out to be predictive, and that's actually ranked number 3. So the others, our machine learning algorithm came up with all these other factors. So things that maybe a cardiologist normally wouldn't think of. It's the same sensor. It's the same weight scale and activity monitor and Fitbit. We didn't use a Fitbit, but things like a Fitbit, but it's how you extract the information that could be useful or useless. So it's not fair to say that sensors are useless in this case. It's fair to say that the algorithm and the conclusion we make based on them could be useful or useless or somewhat useful. So we built this portal for our 3 full-time nurses. They would come, they would look at the blood pressure. If it's more than some number, they would call this patient. That was the plan. It turned out that that wasn't enough, as I mentioned. So we had our algorithm machine learning. We would run this every day based on a combination of these and other things, age, gender, things that the cardiologist didn't give us initially. We came up with a risk factor after some training of data. And so a nurse would come, if they see a 94% chance of readmission, they would call that patient and say, what is going on? The patient would say, maybe I'm depressed, haven't seen my kids, haven't walked, whatever. So they try to encourage them to do something effective. And if a patient has a chance of 6% readmission based on our algorithm, the nurses just wouldn't call them for 2 reasons. Don't want to bug the patient, and they had not enough time to call everybody, all these 1,500 or so patients. And for those who care, this algorithm was based on SVM, which is based on linear regression with some boundary condition. If this doesn't make sense, don't worry about it. Just various type of known machine learning algorithm. The other thing we learned is that off-the-shelf algorithms don't work. We had to design our own or customize known algorithms to make it fit this problem. And for another problem, we had to do something else. And of course, if data gets more complex, these machine learning become more complex. So at the end of the day, the system that we built was something like that. These sensors are a small part of it, a part of it, but this whole system of feedback and behavioral changes and machine learning algorithm and all that turned out to be a big part of the system. And this is true of many other. We have done the AB business. We have done about 30 or so clinical trials in the past 7 years here. They kind of share the same thing. So the 3 tasks that we had to do for every project was build a system. That could mean build a new sensor, or it could mean take a sensor off the shelf, Fitbit, Apple Watch, or what have you. A system evaluation, and normally that means you get 6 or 7 students. You evaluate it based on them. If the results are good, then you are happy and you live happily ever after. And then the final step is deployment. We learned through experience that the first, so let me plot this in time. If you look at the project timeline, it seems these 3 tasks are roughly equal. They actually are not. These are roughly the timeline based on our experience. So you do all those system design and software and algorithm, and you do on a few grad students, you try it on, or a few other people on campus. But the actual deployment, learning from what happens when you go out there, or what happens when somebody drops their sensor in the toilet, or whatever, some really trivial things that I would have never thought of, but they are really real. What if somebody who wants to show that they are active, they put a Fitbit on their dog and have the dog running around? We had cases like that. So we had to build algorithm that we call cheating prevention. We can distinguish between a dog and a human. So things that maybe normally you don't think of, they become real, and we had to take care of it because there was nobody else to take care of it for us. So this part for every project turned out to be very difficult. Throughout here, we had to do redesign, reevaluation, and all that. And most of these deployments start roughly about 600 subjects, and they go to a few thousand in the studies that we have done. So let me give you another project. Gaming for health. Look at children between 7, 8 years of age and let's say 17 or 18 years. Okay, so teenagers and a bit younger. How many hours a week do you think they play video game or screen time and all that? How many say between 0 and 5 hours a week? 5 to 10 hours a week. 10 to 20 hours a week. 20 to 30. Reminder, a full-time job is 40. 30 to 40 hours a week. More than 40. 1, 2, 3, okay. You guys get A. I think I skipped. So it's 44 and a half hours. In US, I don't have a stat for others. So what happens to them? They become obese. They become whatever they become. You know the data. So roughly 30% of kids are overweight and 15% are obese. And it's not a European or Western culture. China has about 200 million people that are overweight and 60 million obese. So I presented these 3 bullets to one of my classes, and I said, come up with a design. They said, this is kind of tough. I said, your grade depends on it. So they came up with this system called No Pain, No Gain. It's a very simple accelerometer. They would wear it every day. The kids, they go out to school or whatever. They come home, automatically they get TV or game time if they've been active. If not, the TV shuts off, the computer shuts off. And no negotiation with parents. This is all automatic. Very simple technique, very simple technology, a $3 accelerometer, but turns out to be very effective. This was licensed out, so we got really excited. We tried the same thing on a bunch of other things. Who knows what this game is? Guitar Hero, Dance Dance Revolution. It's okay, say it. Don't hear it. Exactly. And this is the most popular game in the world. FIFA, 4 billion fans. So what we did, instead of a keyboard, we cut the keyboard by software. Instead, we put an accelerometer on people's body. So when they want to jump and kick and penalty goal and all that, they really need to run and jump and all that. I played with this with my office door closed, and I get tired after 5 minutes. So it's effective. And the quality of sensor here really doesn't matter, because you don't want to be precise at the cost of power and dollar cost and all that. So we put a very low quality sensor. We wanted long battery life. We want charging to be once a week, once a month, once a year. And algorithms are very trivial, just simple thresholding because they are low cost from all the measures. Of course, variable quality, it depends on what the purpose is. So I'll show you a few other examples where you want to have a higher quality. These are a few things we have built here that is already in a startup in Silicon Valley. This is one that the remote health monitoring, a bunch of other things. If you are interested, I'll share some papers or literature on smart pains, shoes that detect pressure ulcer, bed sheets that detect all sorts of pressure, and a SCM scanner, which again is a pressure ulcer. Christopher Reeves, Superman, died because of pressure ulcer, not because of intubation or other things, purely pressure ulcer. So on the other hand, gait, if I want to see how somebody's walking, are they roughly off balance or not, then I cannot use a simple sensor. I got to have very sophisticated sensor. I got to be very precise, because the movement in imbalance is very sensitive. So we said, how do we measure imbalance? There are many ways of doing it. Looking at elderly and their fall, that's kind of a harder study to do. So we started studying the impact of alcohol on people. This is the kind of shoes that we built with a bunch of pressure sensors and accelerometer and all that. And the goal was that we had subjects, they have to do a few shots of vodka. Somebody suggested vodka. Very easy to find subjects. Very easy to find subjects for this study, by the way, graduate students. So look at this guy after, I think, 4 shots of vodka, and see if you can tell whether he's walking properly or not. Not, right? So the question is, this is very, I mean, maybe you and I can look at it, but the sensors got to be really sensitive to detect this imbalance. So we built these, we deploy them, and it turns out that using this linear regression, the prediction value is actually quite high, more than 90%. So look at the way these guys are sitting, and I see a lot of you are sitting like that. Or you are maybe sitting like this. Some of you, don't do that ever again. Why? Posture is a predictor of heart disease. You sit like that, probability of heart failure goes up. Digestion problem, depression, kidney problem, you name it. And I'm not making these up. Just Google posture and heart failure. Let me see you sit straight. You are. I've been watching you. Good job. Right. So this, again, we asked our students to design a system that make you sit straight. And I thought they would never do it. So we have an undergrad at UCLA who did a summer project, James. He built this thing that kind of rotates. And any volunteer? This never been tested before. So warning, if you don't sit straight, you're gonna fall down and break your head.
Small risk.
Yeah, and be careful at the beginning. Okay. Sit up. I told you. Okay. So now try to go a little bit to the right. Oh, I'm holding your hand. So he's collecting data. So she has no choice but to sit straight. Otherwise, you're gonna fall down. After a day, you get so used to it that you don't want to sit in any other chair. I guarantee you. And you really feel good here. And our subjects, those who normally do yoga, do you do yoga? Those who do, they do much better at the beginning. And those who don't, I don't. I fall down quickly. But after a day, we all sit on this normally and feels good. And you feel you are exercising. Thank you. Great. And thank you for building this system in 3 months. So he's collecting data of how balanced you are and all that. And you can get that feedback every day, every hour you make. How much time do I have with it? This is another project NIH sponsor for cancer patient with elderly. We want to go to their home and we want to know where mom is, what she's doing, what she's eating, her vitals and all that. We could go and make the home smart. Put cameras and all that. They are very costly, somewhat intrusive. Many people don't like it. So we came up with something which is called a smart home in a box. We are using a number of beacons that we put on the walls. In fact, we send the box to people's home. The box costs about $60 or so, plus a watch. Watch is whatever it is, $200 or so. So we collect data from home. We know how many times the person went to the bathroom, how many times they opened the kitchen door, the refrigerator, how much time they were sitting down, how active they were, all that information. And our oncologist here, Dr. Naeem, is my collaborator on this. He will use this information to detect the chemical regimen or the cure pathway, instead of just kind of randomly deciding what to do next. So we give them a very similar, like a portal that you see before. We give them a window where they can see all the activities of a patient. They see things like this, which shows roughly what they've been doing today, what areas they spend time on. This is one of our clinics in Santa Monica called Berkeley, which bed they spend time on, which station, activity station they were on. So really the whole point is to allow a doctor to make informed decision instead of, because they don't see their patient that regularly. This kind of helps them with that. We have a center across from this building called the Smart Health, where we kind of reconfigure it to look like a home. So we test our devices in this center before we deploy it. Because if something goes wrong when we deploy it, it's very costly to fix that. Next, I want to talk about nutrition monitors. I have a Fitbit. I see many of you have it, or variations of it that does the same thing, because we care about our activity, but maybe because that's easy to measure. Number of steps, whether it's 70% accurate or 90% or 50%, there are a lot of mechanical and electronic pedometers, accelerometer that can measure that. But the one reason we use it is because it's available. But what is maybe more important is what we eat. For example, 1 hour at the gym, the calorie you consume is the same as 1 cookie, the calorie you gain, okay? So go to the gym for 5 hours, have a few cookies, you're kind of balanced out. So we really need to measure this. In fact, if you look at different culture, I went with my family to Japan last year, and my daughter asked for a tall coffee at the Starbucks, and they gave her a coffee this big, and she said tall coffee. They said that's a tall coffee. Here, right, tall coffee is taller. So we just so the portion is very important. This is typical food that they feed us at wherever fast food, and this is really what we need. So of course, calorie is important, but portion is important. So we wanted to come up with a device that measured the portion. So pedometer for our eating, if you want to call it that. So this was led by Dr. Al-Shurafa, who is now at Northwestern University. We basically built a necklace that measured the quantity of what we eat, not necessarily distinguishing everything. Got a lot of attention, was on CBS News, Good Morning America. Shark Tank asked us to go there. We said absolutely not. And it's based on a very simple methodology. Please take two or one finger and put it here, anywhere, and swallow. You feel that, right? If not, something is wrong with you. You all feel it, right? So next time that you eat, if somebody is not, if people are not watching, do this and eat or drink. You feel it. You feel the movement and vibration. That's all we did. We did a vibration sensor as a necklace, so it can, and we calibrated that. It can measure the number of swallows, which is correlated to how much you eat. And that's actually much better than other methodologies like diary, 24-hour recall, because people tend to forget on purpose or not, feed frequency questionnaires and all that. It's a lot more effective. Not our study, previous studies have shown that. So basically by looking at these counts, we have a very, this looks big, but it's a very simple piezoelectric sensor. We put it in various type of boy shape, girl shape. We have done a number of studies. We have also used it on elderly to look at the amount of liquid they consume, so they are not dehydrated. We can distinguish between liquid and solid. This is the system. I'm not going to go through that. Point is, also, if you just look at the raw data you get from the sensors, you may not be able to make sense of it. But after a number of filtering, algorithm building, and all that, a lot of it you see the previous talk, things you can actually see the swallows that a person does. So it's very predictive. Just for curiosity, we also tried different types of foods, chocolate, celery, water, other type of liquid, nuts, and we can distinguish them. How? If you look at these signals, they look different. So definitely an algorithm can distinguish this. In fact, it can. We can even distinguish, surprisingly, between a cold drink and a hot drink, because the way we drink a tea, for example, is somewhat different. So at the end of the day, what we provide as a feedback to our subject is their habits. So their habits, you have green, positive, red, negative. You ate breakfast today, good job. You're at a good speed. We have accelerometer on these. You are at whatever percent of your goal, your activity and nutrition goal. You skipped meal, you forgot to eat lunch. That's not good, that's negative. You may be dehydrated, you haven't been drinking, we can detect that, and you've been eating too much, or you've been snacking after midnight, or whatever the habits that the doctor or you yourself gonna prescribe. So on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, whatever makes sense, you get this feedback very similar to what you get from pedometers. So we are deploying this on children who are obese and elderly who are dehydrated. Maybe I skipped, I have limited, yeah, let me just say, so this is a project, NIH project on kids with asthma, working on that. We give every kid a kit to take home to detect early asthma and do something about it, asthma attack. And one of the most sophisticated sensors that we have, Christian, can you put that up, is Patti. So Patti is a robot. The eyes are cameras, so it can detect what you are doing. To use Patti for rehab. That's Patti, and that's Christian is the owner. Oh, can you start? It recognizes only Christian, nobody else. So what it does is every day it will recognize you. It will give you a few set of exercises, Tai Chi in this case, because it turns to be best for rehab. And you just follow. It looks at your movement if you are doing something. Would you like to do some Tai Chi? Yes. Yeah. Great. Tai Chi is an important exercise to prevent you from falling asleep. Now, make sure you have space around. Are you ready to do Tai Chi? Yes. Yeah. Great. Follow along. Okay, anyway, you get the idea. So you kind of follow. If you do it wrong, it will tell you, it will remember your habits. It will say, yesterday you did something wrong or you didn't do enough and all that. So this is our most sophisticated sensor that, again, one of our summer students had programmed. And he promised me that he's practicing every day Tai Chi. I don't know. Anyway, thanks very much. So this is a summary. Really, the conclusion is to make these sensors effective, you need to work in close collaboration with medical science, sports, whoever the experts are. Building the sensor, trying it on a small number of people, or taking an off-the-shelf sensor is just a start, is not the end of the project. You really need to deploy them large scale before they become effective. Any question, be happy to answer. Feel free to email me.
Thank you, Majid. Thank you, Emre. This is what practical engineers do. They help us. You opened up our eyes. There was a lot of wisdom in your deployment, and I was trying to convey that to the team I was with. Is how complicated it gets. So let me ask you a question. So, what are the challenges you face when health sciences researchers come to you? What are some of their biggest peaks?
We got to make sure there's synergy there. We are not, many health scientists think that we are programmers and that's the end of it, or we do a website and that's the end of the world. We are not interested. There are freshmen who do that. So they have to become our teammates. We got to be in the same team and we got to be in it for the long run. There are many fields where models exist. Chip design. You tell me the constraint of your board and chip, I'll design it and give it to you. Here, there is no model. It doesn't exist because the health sciences don't know it. You saw the example. They came up with heart failure markers and 99% they were wrong. And we are not health scientists. We don't understand it. So the only way to be successful, in my opinion, is to work together, long run, long term. And that's the main challenge, to make sure the culture is there. And it takes a while to develop that.
Are there questions from the audience? Some of the top-notch engineers here today as captive speakers. So, any questions? So we'll let take a then.
Please.
Hi. How do you mitigate the fact that the language clinicians speak is very different? Often you're on different wavelengths being relationship.
I think if there is willingness to work together and both sides understand that, and we have many examples of it here at UCLA and elsewhere, that barrier is easily overcome. They look for things that we don't think of, and we really appreciate that, and vice versa. So if there is willingness on both, and we have to admit there are so many things, I would never think that somebody may throw their sensor in the toilet, right? So once, or there are factors that I would normally don't think of. Or if I'm looking at my activity monitor, in some cases, it doesn't have to be accurate. As long as the battery lasts for a month, that becomes more important. So as long as there is an understanding, the rest is easily overcome. And if there is not, if we don't have that understanding, then you got to find a new partner.
Yeah, I have a question for, am I, but it's one that you can answer too. I'm going to ask it textualized. So when you start measuring breath, you're worried about the physiology, right? Physics. What about the lived experience? Go back to that, you go back and ask how it feels better.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really a good question. So because it's really underlined. So our models from the lab, they're about activation of storage, and they are not personalized. It applies to everyone, one model applies. But then, how you perceive that activation is a personalized matter, right? I might be an adrenaline junkie, and I might, don't feel that bad. So what the second study tries to do is in the field collect some data using EMAs and try to map the objective effects, the subjective effects. So I think it's a challenge for sure. Right now, what you perceive is how much you perceive.
Yeah, and I don't know if we actually know if you'll perceive versus the physiological which one is more predictive of all that.
How do you approach that?
Yeah, so a lot of, that's why the title of the talk is personalized. So everything has been personalized. The question you ask depends on that specific person. And as it learns through the field, through machine learning, it asks a different question. And we learned that the hard way. The first study that we did for heart failure, we would ask every subject 15 questions every day. After 2 weeks, they all dropped out. All. So now, and a lot, 13 of those 15 were absolutely useless. We knew the answer for that subject. So now it automatically picks a subset. Of course, the whole set got to be given to the machine to begin with, but it will decide who to ask, when to ask, what time of the day, and what format and what language and all that.
But is that data that you actually use, or is it data that you don't use? The logical data.
We absolutely use it. For example, the heart failure study, part of the predicted values are in the response in the question. They are extremely predictive.
Well,
there's a mention that it's last problem, but this general
No. Sorry, it really depends. And if you give me a problem, maybe you have a different answer. If you give me a problem today, I don't know the answer to that. Maybe there are some general characteristics. For example, if you know there is a linear separation, then you certainly want to do SVM and variation. Otherwise, maybe you want to use nearest neighbor and things like that that doesn't do linear separation. So there are some general rules, but beyond that, we do a lot of customization. How and what format, we don't know till we get there. We play with the data, we plot the data. That takes years or months. It's art and science, exactly.
So let's give a hand to both Majid